folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have Nosferatu, a symphony of horror from 1922, directed by F.W. Murnau. We have I'm Not There by Todd Haynes. And newly released, now in theaters, A Complete Unknown by James Mangold. And finally, Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. So it is going to be a great show, folks. Let's see what Vincent Daly has to say about it. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Daly, how we doing over there, buddy?
Tommy boy, how's it going? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
It was a good week. We saw two movies together, which was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie on Christmas before.
I don't think so. I have either. Mostly because it's Christmas.
Yeah, sure. It was a crowded theater. It was the most crowded theater all year.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I think it was a cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially for a film like this.
Yeah.
Like, if I saw A Complete Unknown on Christmas, I would feel...
Oh, it was, snoozer.
Yeah. But no, going to Nosferatu, it felt like a bit of an event, and you don't get that often with movies anymore.
Absolutely.
I think this was the most crowded, and then after that, probably, honestly, was Horizon for me and you.
True.
That was pretty crowded.
Yeah, I think, personally, Deadpool 3 would be the most crowded, but similar volume. Like, honestly, like, it was a packed house. Like, doesn't get more packed than that.
The only open theaters were in the front. Trust me. I mean, I know. No, it was
watching you eat popcorn like a machine, folks. Tom
what are you talking about?
No, Tom, you are an expert at eating popcorn. It is mechanical.
I'll tell you what, the whiplash, the absolute, the tonal shift of, we saw Nosferatu, and it was cool because, I mean, we had some friends go, and then my uncle and cousin went with me then, because they wanted to go see it.
Yep.
So they joined, and we were the ones sitting in the front. But it was so funny because going from front row to see Nosferatu and to literally the back row, we watched A Complete Unknown together.
Yep.
But
I literally chose those back seats because I knew I was just like, I just want to write. This is a 2 hour and 20-minute film. I just need to write the review and not worry about people bothering me.
Oh, so you do it as a complimentary thing?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I always choose. I mean, I've never been have a preference about movie seat or placement, but I always choose on the corners now, just because I don't want to bother anyone if I do take a note or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we never use the 2 or 3 seat aisles on the side, like the window seats. We still do the center ones.
Yep.
But okay, good. Well, that's good that you take that into consideration.
Preferences, yeah.
but it was a blast. It's great.
Alternate title for the week, folks. Bob Dylan is a vampire. That's the best I could do to tie this together. That then led me to just doing Bob Dylan is a vampire all week, just doing a Bob Dylan impression.
We got the impression out of the way.
Yeah.
I don't have to do mine.
You don't have
we're
one?
good to go.
That did also lead me to do Smashing Pumpkins and Bob Dylan is a vampire.
Oh, wow, nice.
Set to drain.
I can't not think of Whale Wars when I hear that song, by the way. Kind of a good show. So we step back in time, and you saw the OG, the 1922 Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Which is really cool to pair that with the new one. I cannot wait to get into the new one. Any opening notes?
No, we can get right into it.
Okay, so we're going to jump back, like I said, to 1922. The technical title is Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror, directed by a guy named F.W. Murnau. The story is classic as far as the book is concerned. This one kind of has its own place in history. It's very, very early cinema, which is cool, and I'm dying to hear about it. I got you the Blu-ray for Christmas.
Yes, you did.
So we can have the best quality as possible.
Yeah. Which was good because there was some AI upscaling controversy with this on Amazon, actually.
Oh, you said that's right, with the Amazon one specifically.
So that was clutch. But
yeah. So just get into it. I'm dying to hear how it looked, how it was, and how'd you like it?
Yeah. Well, my boy F.W. Murnau back on the ones and twos. Folks, it is a movie that is 102 years old and comes very close to being the oldest movie we have on the website. That crown still goes to 1911's Dante Inferno, but this is pretty close.
Oh my God, that is on the site.
Yeah.
Well, then we did Battleship Potemkin too.
Oh, wait, what year was that?
That was 19, I believe.
Oh, really?
1919, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can give the credit to Dante's Inferno. It's basically like a slideshow. It's not even like a real movie.
That is early.
Yeah.
That is very early.
Is them just like moving things in front of the frame. But despite not being named Dracula, Nosferatu pulls very faithfully from Bram Stoker's original novel with characters like Renfield and the ship Demeter. I still don't know if it's Demeter or Demeter.
It's Demeter.
Okay. But maybe most of all, the story establishes the rules of the monster in a way that I always appreciate, and will show you how solid of a foundation that is for a new film to remake pretty much wholesale. If there is one thing I can get across here is that, man, these movies are, I mean, the new one is a direct remake of this 1922 film. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
100 plus years later.
I had questions to ask about that coming up. And with this film, in the title sequences, or in the credit sequences, Bram Stoker does have a credit to his name.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I did some research into it. I was kind of confused in my own research. Originally, this was done to change the names of it and make it kind of its own thing. It does follow it to the letter, so I'm a little bit confused. And then as well, the title cards, where all the dialogue is done in a silent film.
Yeah.
This was referencing the old names. So Thomas Hutter is, I think, Thomas Harker. The one professor is referred to as Van Helsing in the title cards, but not
cool.
in. Yeah, so a little odd as far as how that's placed, but for all intents and purposes, it is just Dracula.
Yeah.
So, and everything that comes with Dracula. Nosferatu is praised as one of the earliest horror movies and one of the purest retellings of the classic novel Dracula. My recommendation for checking it out is exactly for that reason, seeing how horror as a genre could be dialed in so early on in film as a medium, and so early on as, a genre in history. To quote the story, it was in 1443 the first vampire was born, Nosferatu, a name that rings out like the cry of a bird of prey, never to be said aloud. Now, in 1838, we follow Thomas Hutter, a real estate agent who sets out to speak with the grim and mysterious Count Orlok. While in his Gothic castle, Orlok becomes intrigued with a locket Thomas has around his neck, holding the picture of his beloved that the Count is more than eager to be introduced to. With the contract signed, he brings back Nosferatu on the ship Demeter, and with him a wave of mysterious deaths that could only be chalked up to a plague by science. Only a woman can break his frightful spell, and none other than Thomas's wife will offer her blood if it means an end to the death and madness of the vampire. I would say, unlike nearly every other silent film we've covered on the podcast so far, this was just the way the movie builds tension, just feels extremely modern. I found it interesting how so much of this was just directly ripped for Eggers' new film, both for story reasons, but also how compatible the pacing was for modern horror. It may not have and this counts for Eggers' new film as well, may not have a modern horror twist where there are themes interwoven with the scares, but as far as the pacing of just what a horror film is, I mean, it really does feel timeless in a long way, and I think that's credit goes secondhand to the novel as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That there's just something there that is so compatible for like a cinematic language.
For you to say that, I mean, it's an hour and a half still.
Yeah.
And to see that it was an hour and 34 minutes kind of really surprised me. I was almost thinking this is going to be one of those 80-minute.
Yeah.
Because with silent films, you can only kind of give the audience so much.
Yep.
But the fact that if you're saying that he held it, and the director, FW, was able to hold it for that long and keep you engaged, it's very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially by the second act, the story has a juggling act of different plot lines that feel great. Stakes and tension is able to be cranked up despite us kind of waiting for things to fall into place by the time Nosferatu gets to the town. Sometimes reviewing movies this old, it's hard to even put them in a genre for how simple they could be. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, too. It's just so simple. It's like, how is this going to run, a feature length?
Yeah.
But there's something to this here. It's also 10 years older than Vampire, a movie we previously reviewed on the podcast and for the site, being the oldest vampire movie I knew about. So it's surprising that it also beat that in a lot of ways. But here, the fundamentals of building a horror are just shown right away, and the sheer amount of kind of old German creepiness just works to be scary in its own way, regardless of the age. I think a great example is the Renfield character, or who is Knock in the new film that we saw together.
Yes, yeah.
Out of the many direct ripped-off shots that in the new film, I was disappointed to see not more was done with him, because he's really crazy in this. He's on the top of rooftops, like screaming down at people, like acting mad. Like I was like, wow, this is really something else. But it's in that kind of dedication to just like trying to scare you is what makes it most in that genre of horror. Where, I don't know, even when reviewed Murnau's other movie, Faust, was really, through the roof on that. I love that movie. There was still something there was like, I don't know how to exactly define this in one clean genre. Here, it is really fits just so neatly into what horror should be and what it really is. The biggest surprise there is that you might not be outright scared in modern day, but it does try to constantly unnerve you. Certain jerks in the editing can feel scary, especially around Nosferatu's movement. I don't know if this is a technical limitation or if this was intentional, but
it's
it'll kind of jerk forward, and it's like, all right, yeah, that's a little spooky. Like lighthearted or old-fashioned moments that you get with old movies like this just come off so deliberately tragic. Like Hutter is writing a letter to Ellen and is so like, I don't know how to describe it, like 1920s about it. He's just like, he's just like smitten. But it's portrayed as such a tragic moment of just like, oh, he really doesn't know what's coming. My favorite aspect was how the investigation into the quote-unquote neck bite plague lets you experience the rules of the vampire ground up, which longtime listeners of the show will know is exactly my shit. Like, I love that. I love the ability to jump into this and not, I don't know, with the expectation or with the crafting that there was, no one knew what the vampire was. So there was something different that happened with the story of like unveiling what the vampire is and, the horrors that it brings with it. But the best example of scary for scary's sake that comes in this is actually in the professor lecture in the middle of the story that simply shows a Venus flytrap eating a fly. And this is where I was just sold on this creating true horror because, in itself, was the scene scary? No, it's just a Venus flytrap just trying to, eat. But there was something there that because it wasn't directly connected to the vampire, it was there, that scene's purpose was to create a simple feeling of unease. And you can maybe draw the parallel to the blood-sucking of our monster, but there was just something there that scene was put in there because maybe it was a little slow at that moment, and they needed something to keep the scares up. And that's where I would really, stick on that this is true horror, despite being, over 100 years old. Does that make sense?
I think it absolutely does. And I think it's extremely impressive. And the fact that I'm sure that when this came out, an audience saw this, had a completely maybe different feeling for a different way than what you have now.
Sure.
It's almost like the end goal is the same.
Yeah.
Or it can get away with something that's almost that the 100-year gap helps.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I think that there is something, like you said in the beginning, something timeless to that.
There's also, I'll mention it in the new Nosferatu, but one of the best scenes is actually on the ship. And it comes from kind of discovering a lot of rats on the ship. And it's just I think it's kind of a backhanded compliment on Eggers to pull so directly, like one-to-one, from
You have
how
the book,
scene
though,
looks.
too.
Yeah, true.
There
Very
is
true.
the original text. You know what I mean?
But it's even just like how the one sailor pulls up the axe and it's silhouetted on the night sky, and the way he swings on on these crates filled with rats, like it really is a remake through and through. But I think that a lot of that praise there is for the original, just like, wow, this was still evoking so much despite its limitations, and its huge limitations. As our next film in, I guess I'll call it the unofficial study of German Expressionism, I was really eager to check this out after just being thrilled with Faust from 1926, both from F.W. Murnau. This does get experimental with some drastic shifts in color, which is done through like full filters over the screen. But sadly, overall, I just wasn't anywhere as impressed with the visuals as I was with Faust. I don't know what happens detailed in his career or 4 years down the road, but that's where I still think, that's still peak Murnau for me, going to Faust in a couple years later. Here, it's good. It does feel like all the tricks that you can see around other type of silent films. The most iconic shot of the film all come from work with shadows, though, which yet again will be an aspect the new film takes on for its own. I think above everything, though, I was most impressed with the story and how, despite this being over 100 years old, still understood the building blocks needed to hook the audience and not only hold their attention, but grab them with something scary. We're going to go ahead and give Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, 1922, a 72.
72%. Very good score.
Yeah.
Very good score. I mean,
I'm definitely going under a little bit of what the huge reputation this has on.
well, I mean, come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
72 is a good score.
Absolutely. I think that's
for
realistic, and I really do mean it. It had chops to still keep your attention in modern day in a way that a good horror would.
I just absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Again, I love the fact that you didn't say anything about the length of it.
Yeah.
And it grabbed you enough to keep you in the story. And again, no doubt people were probably freaked out and saw this as a horror film for it being terrorizing.
Absolutely.
Back then.
Absolutely.
But if enough elements are there, or if enough of the theming is there, that you can still enjoy it today, it's just like, wow, just super incredible.
Yep.
72% for Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. Okay, so let's take a big shift in tone and years to 2007.
Yeah, we're bouncing back and forth.
A film that I really was not too aware of, this one. Huge ensemble cast. It's no surprise to see Soderbergh is EP on this. Executive
really?
producer.
Wow.
But the film is called I'm Not There, and it's directed by Todd Haynes. So get into I'm Not There.
Well, I'll say this probably multiple times through both of our Dylan feature films, but I am not a huge Bob Dylan fan. And one of the challenges in making a music biopic for him over the years are his many personas and kind of evolutions as an artist. I would say in the smart trend of recent biopics, we see our new film focus in to get one slice of his life at overall one kind of pivotal time, something I support heavily from a writing perspective. Give us the most important moment in someone's life, and also you give us the reason why the story had to be told. That's really, I think, the backbone that some of these music biopics lack, honestly.
Yeah, I could go either way with it. I think if you have somebody as big as Bob Dylan, I think you have the luxury of just being able to take a snapshot or a certain point in his life or a decade or whatever.
Sure.
I do think that there's something there. Let's just hone down for these next two films here. When you say I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan, I kind of say that as well.
Yep.
But it's not because I don't like Bob Dylan or his music. It's more so I just personally never went through a Bob Dylan phase.
Yeah.
I had a Neil Young phase. I had whatever. I mean, I even got into Donovan a little bit.
Sure.
But for some reason, Bob Dylan, I don't know if it's because it's almost like The Godfather. It's just like, I know he's good. I know he's one of the greats. You're like,
Maybe
you know what I mean?
that's the factor. Yeah, maybe that is.
Also, we were you and I specifically are so into the band.
Yes.
Who it was Bob Dylan's band come the 60s. Mm-hmm. And was it late 50s, early 60s?
No. Yeah, I think it's I think actually towards more of his later 60s because that's all him going away from acoustic into more like electric music.
Right. So we're such band heads that it's almost shocked that Bob Dylan didn't rub off more for us.
Yep.
But I
mean, even to the point like the last waltz, like it's Bob Dylan is like the payoff at the very end.
And yet he never ccame across our plate for whatever reason.
I don't know. It's not hate.
Okay, so you don't like the music.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like trying to almost throw you a bone.
Yeah. Listen, I respect the guy. I respect that as like kind of a rock legend, but I don't know. It annoys me. With me. Like it's just like not for me. But this 2007 film tackles the much larger scope of his life and that challenge of like this dude evolves almost every decade and becomes a new artist. And it takes on that challenge in just a very 2000s way. That at this time, you have Walk the Line, you have Ray, you have really...
Are those out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have the biopic, really, the music biopic really settling in and becoming cookie cutter at this point. This does this in just a way that I would say is interesting regardless of who it's about. And I think worth checking out, if anything, if you're not into Bob Dylan, because
like structure of the film is cool. It's like a good movie.
Absolutely, it was a creative movie and not cookie cutter in the slightest. I'm Not There is told in non-linear stories showing 6 different actors portray Bob Dylan. This give context to both at different stages of his life, but also to kind of magnify one specific angle of his character, giving us a complete picture by the end. These roles are filled by, frankly, a dynamite cast for the early 2000s. The personas first are poet, prophet, outlaw, fake, get ready here, star of electricity, and rock and roll martyr. A little loose in the naming. They could have slimmed that up a little bit.
Okay, so that's what we're dealing with.
Those are the personas.
Does it fade to black and then with white lettering? That's like it's
no,
broken
it's
up into
introduced
chapters.
right in the beginning.
Okay, gotcha.
Right in the beginning. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't guessed what I'll compare this to yet.
I have a comparison that I want to make on this too.
Yeah. The actors to fill those same roles in the same exact order are Ben Whishaw, Christian Bale, Richard Gere, a child actor named Marcus Franklin, Heath Ledger, and finally Cate Blanchett. Just awesome. Awesome.
Huge cast, ridiculous.
2007, this is like probably the most dynamite cast.
This is prime for right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Heath, but I mean, Richard Gere is kind of having, he's Gere. He's in a show called The Agency, I want to say.
Oh, really?
People are like loving him in it.
Yeah.
And then Chris Christopherson is the narrator, by the way.
Oh, really? Interesting.
But
Statcast.
Going with Cate Blanchett.
It's probably my favorite. Honestly, she does a great Dylan. Yeah, I thought she was awesome in this. I know I told you that, and you kind of rolled your eyes at it, but I'm telling you, she probably does a better job than Christian Bale.
I see.
Especially singing wise.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I rolled my eyes just because I didn't know what the movie was until after, and I put it on the site.
Sure.
Now it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. But I was laughing because it's just like, so Cate Blanchett. Does she ride a motorcycle in this?
I don't know.
Because Dylan rides a motorcycle.
No,
about motorcycles?
she's in the back of cars a lot. I don't think she's in a motorcycle at all.
I was going to make the comparison. This is the character she plays in Ocean's 8.
Oh, right.
She basically plays a dude.
Yep.
She wears a leather jacket and drives motorcycles. And I was like, this is
precursor.
Anyway, Statcast.
Yeah. But through a kind of a combination of dreamlike sequences and real life events, we get to see Bob Dylan over nearly his entire career, whether you recognize him or not. Folks, I can't stress how unique this film is and is totally worth checking out to see a music biopic break from any possible mold that we know already. That same cookie cutter mold that we sadly see the new film fall into. So I was like, in the head-to-head this week, this was the better biopic by far because it was so like, wow, so inventive in how it delivered the story to us. Like any anthology film, a collection of short films, the quality and the genre is going to kind of vary from story to story. I've commented in the past how it can be kind of hard not to directly compare these stories side by side. Mm-hmm. Like, which one do you prefer? Which one was weaker? I think that's something unique to kind of anthology films. But what it's worth, Cate Blanchett was my favorite, showing the disaster performance at the Newport Folk Festival, which will basically be the climax for our new film as well. So an important event in Bob's life. Tom, honestly, the editing snaps, the way it snaps between kind of story lanes, it's a Cloud Atlas flick. Boom.
Oh, really?
This is the start of a compilation on a site. Cloud Atlas like.
Okay. You're very excited about it. I can tell.
I'm telling you, it was more Cloud Atlas than any other time we've joked about this.
Okay, that's fine. And it's just because it's non-linear, so basically you're jumping around to any point in his life?
No, it's the jump around, but it's also how like the themes are kind of weaved side by side.
Okay.
Sometimes you get pairs, sometimes you get everyone's similar on the same page.
Well, this is connective tissue with Ben Winshaw then, because he's in Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, exactly. But totally a new compilation on the site. Movies like Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, there'll be 2 movies on there.
Yeah. No, we've definitely joked about this in the past. There was something else. But no joke, I would describe this as very dreamlike at times, and in a genre that is filled constantly with the same highs and the same lows to end up in the same place, this used its subject to inform the filmmaking decisions. I can't tell you how electric that is. I feel like that is what I really want to recommend and what I'm craving for in just year after year, these music biopics coming out as the same exact experience.
Oh, so many of them.
Yeah, so like this is one to pay attention to. I will say on the bad end, the writing is just a bit heavy-handed, or at least kind of feels so self-important that it was just a bit of a turnoff for me. And maybe that's just an issue with me of just how Bob Dylan is revered and me not being a Bob Dylan fan, because I kind of got a similar feeling in the new one. I don't know. What are your thoughts there? Did you feel that the writing was a little bit of an eye roll or a little bit too self-important?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on this one at all. Mm-hmm. The new one, we'll get into it then. I just don't think there was much there at all as far as content outside of singing.
Sure.
So I can't really
outside of the performance.
Yeah, I can't really talk to. It's so much on the writing, honestly.
True.
Because I just think there was such a lack of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I would say, regardless, the moments in this, there's some moments that almost made my skin crawl, and one of them has to do with casting. You might look at the cast and say Cate Blanchett playing Bob Dylan is the biggest stretch. But no. Like I mentioned, there is a child actor here, Marcus Franklin, that not only represents his Bob Dylan's kind of carny youth as a black child, that is a guitar prodigy. Honestly, felt stripped right out of Dewey Cox when like the kid is just like playing like a better than the blues players he's playing for. I mean, it really is the origin of the joke or the parody. But this child is also named Woody Guthrie, a folk singer, inspiration for Bob Dylan, no doubt, friends in the course of their lives, but notably not black. And there's something here that, I don't know, there's just so much, almost every story, every little segment has one of these moments where I was just like, oh, I don't know if like Bob Dylan's writing this or just a mega fan of Bob Dylan, but like it hurts some believability. I don't know. It feels cringy. It feels way too, I don't know, not reverent, but way too in love with the idea of Bob Dylan.
It's full of itself a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that totally makes sense. It's a movie like this is going to be hit or miss as far as each individual thing going on in the film for people.
Yeah.
Your tolerance per individual playing Bob Dylan and the way that they're played is just it's going to be a toss up.
Yep.
Which can hurt the whole movie.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it's tough because, this is one of many examples that makes some of the more drastic shifts in the film and that the film has in store for you a little hard to get on board with. But at the same time, it shows how much balls the movie has to break from the norm. Richard Gere's segment, believe it or not, is a fantasy western of sorts, which was pretty interesting. But overall, I can't help but feel some of the writing, I don't know, a bit double-edged. There's moments that it was working for me, and there was moments that it was really not working for me. I would still recommend checking this out, though, because it's precisely because I wasn't a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I came away with such an amazing experience from this film. While this still covers most of his life, like the many music biopics hot at the time, the main appeal of this film is far from simply following the events of his life. If anything, this was made clear after watching our new film, because his life isn't that dramatic, it doesn't have to lend itself to a typical cinematic arc. Instead, you are drawn in for how the film decides to portray this artist next, and slowly, as you understand the outline of each of these versions, you start to grasp the full picture. We're going to go ahead and give I'm Not There 2007 a 70 on the dot.
Okay, 70%. These are good scores.
Yeah.
If anyone's new to the podcast or anything like that, you're in the 70s. This is a pretty good movie, basically.
Yep.
I don't know if I have any questions about it. I feel like I did a pretty good job at just like hitting all the aspects.
Singing wise, maybe it was a little bit inferior to the new film, but you get Christian Bale trying to sing.
Again, that's why
very
cool that you have
cool.
6 different people playing 6 different elements of his life. But it is going to be a tolerance factor per person watching.
Yes.
Per person
depicting
being Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally know what you mean.
How was Ben Whishaw, by the way?
Good. He has the most limited. I wanted more from him.
That makes sense.
He's like Bob Dylan just in interview scenarios. So very outspoken.
How was his
and
accent work?
Fine. They all try kind of their own thing. And I would say none of them are trying to do what Timothy does in the new one, where it's
become him
exactly,
as possible. Yeah,
exactly. So there's something more to, I don't know if they were all fans or just the understanding in the writing department of just like, there is this much room for each of these to kind of make it their own.
Yeah.
Kate was my top. I would say probably after that, probably Heath Ledger, but Heath is just like, I don't know, there's something magical to seeing him on screen now. Like, I love catching Heath Ledger in a movie, not because like
you watch extra
it's the
closely.
Joker, no, it's because like exactly. You pay attention and you try to spot the little pieces that you see in that performance. So
when I watch old Heath stuff, it is a sense of, oh man, what could have been with this actor,
Absolutely.
And especially after the performance that he had with The Dark Knight, it's like, man, the possibilities are endless of what we're going to get with this guy.
Yep.
But, okay, all right. Hey, cool movie, though. Cool movie. 70% for I'm Not There. Before we go on to our next 2, we just want to thank our producer for the show. I'm not going to play the music because we have no note, but Maxwell Farnsworth donated in a few times, and he did again. He gave you a movie ticket for this week.
There we go.
So, Max, you are executive producer of episode 167 of the Daily Ratings, and just, you continue to produce, and we thank you so much, man. If you want, send in a note. If you've got something you want to say or ask or anything, just do that. We'll, of course, in the coming episodes, we'll read that. Folks, if you want to be a producer of the Daily Ratings, head to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, because through your donations and your monetary support, you become an actual legitimate producer of the Daily Ratings. We are solely and only producer supported here. We're not advertised supported, so we're not going to shove ads in your face or on the website. We're not Patreon supported, where we make you pay a certain amount of money a month, and then we have extra content for those special people. It's none of that. Vin and I, everything that we do, everything that we create, it's out there. It's there for free, and everybody has access to it. But if you're enjoying it, and if you're using it, and if you're finding what we do here somewhat valuable to you, then can you give us value back? And that's our monetary support in becoming a producer. It's called the value for value model. So again, you head to the donations tab on the dailyratings.com, and it's whatever you want. There's some set donations there, but any donation, big or small, you can just send in, and also with it, send a producer note as well. And that could be if you have questions for us or comments, critiques of the show, if you have suggestions, whatever. You're a producer. So whatever you want to say or ask or tell us, we want to hear it. So you can email us at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. You email us your producer note there. And yeah, just send it along in with your donation. And this is when we'll give you the thanks and the shout out in our producer segment here. So again, Max, thank you so much for executive producing. If you want to be an executive producer for episode 168, just head to thedailyratings.com. Okay, Vin, with that, let's go. We're going to start with A Complete Unknown.
Okay.
Like I said, we saw it together. James Mangold directed it. It's the same exact guy who did Walk the Line. So I would say hopes are high walking into this. I wasn't, even like 20 minutes before walking into the theater, I wasn't excited to go see this movie.
Sure.
Because I wasn't too excited to see a Bob Dylan biopic.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I was excited to see what could be done with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's almost like win me over. Because I think whether you like Johnny Cash or not, there's something to Walk the Line that can win a lot of people over.
Absolutely.
You know, so
I think that's the goal of any one of these music biopics, because it's like, all right, you know, I may not be a fan, make me walk out as a fan in some way.
Sure,
So-
that, yeah. Or teach me something. At least
Yeah.
I walk out being like, just like, man, I'm glad I know that story.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Okay, A Complete Unknown. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It's rated R. Timmy is at the forefront.
Yeah.
Why don't you jump us in, and we'll take it back and forth.
Well, Timmy back around for the second time this year, and seems like he's planning to shore up his wins come award season with this. Is getting a lot of praise, and primarily getting praise just for Timothée Chalamet directly. I think that really is the recommendation, the use case here. You are a Bob Dylan fan, you're a Timothée Chalamet fan, that's where you go to see this. Like I said earlier, not a huge Bob Dylan fan, so I don't find myself in that. But the fact that Martin Scorsese has made 2 separate movies about the guy, I guess I gotta like him. You know what I mean? Like,
He did. I forgot he did. He totally did.
my God, like, what am I not seeing?
Well, I mean, there's other stuff that Marty likes that you're not so hot onto.
It's so true.
Well, we can hash that another day.
So true. Wait for next July. The setting captures the folk scene of New York that we touched on for our Inside Llewyn Davis review, kind of showing that it was not the least bit glamorous, even though you have like records, selling artists. And director James Mangold does a good job at broadening that scope to show how the genre struggled simultaneously while growing. But this becomes a self-inflicted wound on the story as things aren't that dramatic and blown out of size. I found myself feeling that this failed one of the first tests of a music biopic, and was it a story worth telling? And I gotta say, I don't think it is. I think performance, I think music, being the other side of that test for me, there's a worth itness there. I think Tim does a good job. But there's just something here that the story was not substantial enough and just didn't lend itself to, a cinematic beat to it. I don't know. You feel about the same way?
Yeah. I don't know how much you want me to get into it right away.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm coming off the kind of the same way. I mean, where I'm not too hot on this film.
Sure.
But that being said, I'll talk about Timmy right now. This was supposed to come out earlier and was held back in COVID days.
Okay.
So I think it was like around in the year of 2020.
Oh, really?
Or 21. Timmy was doing, I think, vocal work and learning how to play guitar.
Wow.
So then COVID pushed things back, and I think it even gave them an even longer runway then to get better at what they needed to do.
Wow.
So just so people know, if they watch this, it is Timmy playing and doing a lot of the singing.
And there is a lot of singing. Absolutely. A Complete Unknown is your typical music biopic showing Bob Dylan's life from 1961 to roughly 1965, giving us the skyrocketing start of his career without much drama in between. Showing up to New York with a different name and guitar on his back, Bob Dylan quickly becomes a magnetic force to everyone he meets, drawing them in with his one-of-a-kind worldview. His carny past weaves a thread of rebellion in him, even when things are going his way, not wanting to be any part of the establishment despite his new fame. Fellow musicians, love interests, and pretty much everyone he meets has a fascination with him, trying to figure out what box they can put him in, but like we touched on already, his personas as an artist can't be neatly organized. This creates a story that doesn't neatly line up with a movie either. And while there are plenty of expected highs and lows to this music biopic, unfortunately, it's a story where the biggest drama is whether he'll play electric guitar or acoustic guitar. And that's no joke. That really is the drama. Wait, what are you going to play? What are you going to play? Okay. The story spans a lot of key figures in blues and folk at the time, whether, it be most getting kind of just a glancing mention. Others are the closest thing we get to an antagonist for the story. I'll say it's the role of jealousy that kind of plays an element here, that jealousy between musicians and for fame. That is a little bit of the conflict of the story, but I think it only highlights how this period of his life was not just very dramatic in a way a story needs to be. Ed Norton plays Pete Seeger, a folk music legend who kind of oddly twisted into an opposition in the story. Tom, I know you weren't sold on this performance. Any further thoughts now that you marinated on it?
Well, I know the real character a little bit of who he's playing as far as Pete Seeger goes. Sure. Not very well, but Edward Norton wasn't selling me on it, and I was seeing too much Edward Norton trying to act. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
And that was an issue almost throughout the entire film. But until like the last 10 minutes, where all of a sudden, I don't know if it just like I just gave up. Yeah. But overall, by the end, it's just like, all right, he won me over. I guess I like him as a character. It's fine.
Good.
Do you know what I mean? Where you can kind of just, I feel like I can see Edward Norton acting, and I'm not seeing Edward Norton as a character.
I totally get what you mean. I think what kind of turned me around was actually post the movie. I listened to some Pete Seeger stuff. I listened to Joan Baez as well, who's in this film, and he really just in line with Timothy. He lines up that vocal performance. He sounds like Pete Seeger in a lot of ways.
No, I mean, I don't.
And maybe it doesn't take a lot to be like real gentle, or sound, timid like that. But I feel like he did a good job,
But there's something different. It's a very tricky performance. You need to be more than, in my opinion, it's almost like you need to be more than good, almost. You almost need to become the person.
You gotta live up to the legend.
So it's not just the voice and some work around your eyes, some makeup work around the eyes that can do it for me. You look at like Joaquin Phoenix, like became kind of Johnny Cash in that role a little bit.
Absolutely.
And where these guys get really close and you can do the voice, but it's not always just doing the voice. There's something else there that's like, you need to be exceptional for me to maybe to sell it. And then you have a different other way of playing people as well, where I don't know why I always go to this, but when you look at Sam, not Sam Neill, not Sam Harris, he's in Moon.
Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, so when you look at Sam Rockwell being George W. Bush in Vice, it's a terrible George W. Bush impression. Like, it's not a good. And yet it works.
Sure.
Because it's just Sam Rockwell's
yeah, it really
George
is.
W. Bush. You know what I mean? We're not trying to get Timmy's Bob Dylan. He's trying to be Bob Dylan. We're not really getting Edward Norton's Pete Seeger. Edward Norton is trying to be Pete Seeger.
Okay, interesting.
And I know I'm blurring lines, and that might seem like, I don't know, nitpicking things. But I'm just, for me, the uncanny valley, the being taken out of it, the me not thinking about the story on screen and thinking about, Ed Norton's doing this right now.
Sure.
There's a big difference there, actually, in those little tiny lines that I might be crossing there.
Absolutely. And I think there's something there as well of just like how it's sold. A great example in Vice is just like, well, that movie is not your typical movie. I mean, it's like a comedy most of the time. So like if it's sold in the movie, in the film, how it's executed upon, I think that makes the difference here. And this is just such a focus on the music.
Well, and for instance, you loved Kate Blanchett's version of him. Yeah. I doubt that she was trying to nail the voice as far as Timmy goes.
It's just Kate Blanchett.
But it's something that you're capturing some type of persona.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of Josh Brolin playing George W. Bush in W. He does an incredible job. And yet he sells it in a certain way because it's not exactly George W. Bush trying, or not Josh Brolin becoming that person, but emulating enough.
Sure.
There's an emulation thing there.
Yep.
So there's something uncanny with Ed Norton. I think Timmy, I do want to give him his props for like how much he worked at this character and how very good it was. I would almost say that Austin Butler was better at Elvis than Timmy was at Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
But they're two different movies.
Much worse film. Elvis was...
You had issues with it.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of my main take on those two guys.
Yeah.
Who were really the ones trying to do proper impressions.
Sure.
Where other people are trying to emulate, in my opinion, is what it seems like.
Yeah. And I think that continues on to just how some of these artists are crafted, again, kind of odd oppositions. They're not bad guys, per se, but they're definitely the closest thing we get to conflict in the story. The wonderful Joan Baez is played by Monica Barbero, and once again, kind of just twisted into a jealous ex for the course of the story with zero conflict. So a little odd. Tom, I know we're going to disagree on our boy Boyd Holbrook. I like him. I like that he's working with Mangold after like Logan, like he's continuing that.
Yep.
I thought it was one of the worst Johnny Cash impressions I've seen in a while.
So here's the thing. I liked him as I was so happy with Boyd Holbrook because here, two different things. It goes exactly what I was just took 5 minutes to say.
Yep.
I see Boyd Holbrook kind of just being Boyd Holbrook, being Johnny Cash, and somehow it works.
Sure.
But I'm not seeing like, well, clearly that's Johnny Cash on screen.
Right.
No.
Which maybe it's a folly to even try to attempt. You know, it's never going to be.
Well, or take Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix becomes him, and it's just like, great job.
Yeah.
Boyd Holbrook is kind of doing something completely else,
yeah.
and it works.
Yeah.
There's something I don't know.
He's just drunk.
I can't. I don't even know if I can parcel it out in my head to even tell people listening to the podcast.
I think I get what you're saying, though. There's in the spirit of the character.
Thank you. Okay,
and then there
emulates
is
the wrong
character.
word. Yes, emulates the wrong word because what Timmy is trying to do is emulate.
Yes,
and then
Boyd is definitely trying to
be in the spirit of the character.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for yes.
Well, either way though, it's a lot of different.
Boyd was great. Boyd Holbrook, he was so.
I don't know about great.
Oh, I wanted that movie.
You want another Johnny Cash?
I will take one. Boyd Holbrook.
Who knows? Maybe Mangold will go a second round. But let's get to the meat and talk a little bit more about Timothy, though, because I think it's a performance worth checking out. In many ways, this project just felt so much like the old adage, right time, right place. But the facial similarities of Timothy to Bob Dylan, I think they go a long way for just kind of creating a natural performance to it. The biggest praise, though, goes to the fact that he does all of the singing. And to my ears as a passing Bob Dylan fan, I don't know, proto Bob Dylan fan, I think he does a pretty solid job. I'm sure, actually, I'll mention it again, but when we covered the Amy Winehouse movie, Back to Black,
are you surprised by her? How good she was?
I was surprised by her. It also then surprised me to hear like hardcore Amy Winehouse fans like completely trash that performance. So I think my thoughts on that as like I tackle these movies as they come out, it really just depends on, does it, again, sell you on what the character they're portraying, and separate from that is the hardcore fans are probably going to think what they're going to think about it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's never going to be close
Look, we know Bob Dylan enough. It's not like we never heard that. We know him enough to know that this was a good...
Yeah.
I think Timmy I would prefer Timmy singing Bob Dylan than the talking and at once when the songs are over with.
I agree.
That's where it's a little bit, again, that uncanny valley kind of popping in there where it's like, something doesn't quite seem right to me.
Yep.
Singing, different story, was pretty good.
I definitely agree. These songs have a odd demand because while they are just musically simple, most of these are just chords on the guitar, the lyrics are the real juggling act for his performance. Multiply this by 20 plus songs in the film. I kid you not, folks. And surprisingly, you get an emphasis on music that these biopics usually don't have the time to squeeze in. So that kind of relates to, it's a 2 hours and 20 minutes film. Did I love that it was that long? No. But I think there's something there is just like this has such a focus on music. I could see a fan of Bob Dylan not only being happy with his performance, but happy with just how much time the music has to shine. You know what I mean? So I'm a little bit torn on that. But unfortunately, aside from this music focus, the skeleton of the story is very cookie cutter as far as these type of movies go. Instead of the much smaller slice I was kind of hoping for, it is a small slice, but I wanted it even smaller. We still get a good stretch of his career and evolving personality, but within that story, there is just so little to define him as a character, with even less conflict and drama to it. I would say not, just a little bit mile markers, goalposts here. Not as bad as something like Bohemian Rhapsody, but also not too much above Back to Black, which we covered earlier this year. Folks, my rules for music biopics will always be the same. It's about a worth itness to the story and how the musical performance is done. I think the music passes with flying colors, luckily, thanks to Chalamet's performance. But I think, man, the root of some of that blahness to the story that I'm feeling is the fact that Bob Dylan doesn't have a career that fits a cinematic spin. And believe me, folks, that's equally a compliment to the real Bob Dylan as much as it is a critique to this film. We're going to go ahead and give a complete unknown a 63.
Okay, 63. I really didn't know where you're going to land on that. 63. Okay. Right there. That's not bad.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
I'm curious your thoughts.
If we say that 65 is a good movie, that's where you're at. So, what was I shouting when we walked out of the theater?
50s?
No. I said no. I was saying this wasn't a movie.
Oh yeah. That's right.
If you are a fan of Bob Dylan, you are going to like this movie. You should go see this movie, and you're going to enjoy yourself in this movie. Mm-hmm. If you're watching it as a person that tolerates the music or likes this kind, like for me, I like this kind of music. Mm-hmm. I just never had a Bob Dylan phase, as I said.
Sure.
It isn't a great movie, so I wasn't won over by anything. Mm-hmm. I think that's a bit of an issue. So a 2 hour and 20 minutes was long. The reason why I'm going at the theater and kept on saying this wasn't a movie, is because there's not really a story. This is just how... These are tiny, tiny scenes in between Timmy playing music. So again, if you're a Bob Dylan fan, it's great because you're getting Bob Dylan. And if you're going to do the dishes and put on a Bob Dylan greatest hits, don't worry about it. Just throw on the movie. Because you're going to have that much. It's going to be the same thing.
Absolutely.
And I kind of, what's my note here? I say, so as far as his life points in the 61 to 65 era, I say that they cover the hits and then they play the hits.
Yeah, I like that.
We don't get enough. You said that, there's not his story, his actual life, there's not much of a cinematic spin there. Sure. I disagree. I just don't think that we didn't get it. There's a love triangle that goes on. We never see the relationship doesn't affect him. Where does his songs come from? What is he feeling?
Sure.
What's going on in his brain and in his life that is causing for these specific lyrics to come out at the time they are?
Absolutely.
What hardship has he gone through? Again, there's a love triangle here, and at different parts, it falls apart at different parts, and it doesn't affect him. It just affects the other person. His relationship with Pete Seeger never really affects him. It affects Pete Seeger. Woody Guthrie, played by my boy Scoot, again, getting the spirit of Woody Guthrie, maybe, but not exactly trying to be Woody Guthrie. But again, even that relationship, we can see that he's not affected by it. Scoot is, or I should say, Woody Guthrie is affected by Bob Dylan more than Bob Dylan is affected by Scoot. And so that was annoying to me because where are these songs coming from? And we're never even told that.
Well, I think that's the challenge. No one's in Bob Dylan's head.
Yeah, but it's a movie.
Sure.
So why don't you try?
Yeah. Why don't you maybe try to put the pieces together?
Right, we know we have this love triangle going on. We know, again, relationships I see are affected in this film, and yet they're not affecting Bob Dylan, the one guy who I want to see affected, and why he's coming up with the songs that we then see for basically the large majority of the movie. So there's an emptiness to the film, and I think that's where I'm at, really. I was checking my watch at the end, but as a person who likes this period of music, this time of music, I can understand how... Like, if you love Bob Dylan, you're going to love this movie. And good for you, and you ought to. Like, enjoy it.
There were plenty in our theater as well.
There definitely were. I just think there was something failed in the execution here. That a larger audience that maybe you would want to bring in this kind of medium that you could get, and you didn't really get it. I heard Oliver Stone in an interview recently. He was on the PBD podcast. PBD.
Yeah. What is PBD?
PBD, Patrick Bet David podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Rob, scroll up. Rob, zoom in. Rob, PBD podcast. But Oliver Stone, he was asking about Gladiator 2.
Okay.
And Oliver Stone was, it's empty calories. And I kind of think that that's a little bit this for me. It feels great, and I think if that's why, when you love the guy, you're going to love this movie. But as far as real weight there, and as far as the importance of maybe who this guy is, it's not touched on enough. And that's where the emptiness of the calories kind of come in. Anyway, with that, I'm going to give it one shoe, one lace.
There it is.
That's it. No second shoe in the picture.
There it is. Bob Dylan couldn't afford it.
That's Okay, all right, so Complete Unknown, 63%. Yeah, I thought, actually, you gave it a little bit higher than I thought, maybe.
I was definitely hotter on it coming out of the film as well. I think it's all relates to that performance. It really is.
And props to Timmy.
Yeah,
Total props to Timmy. Okay, so we're going to move on to the big one at the Christmas showing. We're jumping back to Germany for Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. Vin has been excited about this for all year. I started to get excited about it. This guy did a smaller film called The Witch, which put him on the map.
Yeah.
Then, of course, he did The Lighthouse, which blew him up. And then he did The Northman as well. This is the director we're working with. He clearly loves old tales, old fairy tales, folklore.
There
you go, folklore. Big-time folklore guy. So he picked up this property. He's been wanting to do this. I think this is somewhat 10 years in the making. He's been playing around with script and working on this.
Yeah. I wasn't going to go into it too much, but actually his big break was a theater performance where he did a black and white live-action Nosferatu as a high schooler.
And a bit of a different script. And that's... Yes, I heard him say that. Yeah, that kind of had to do with what happened in the future, but not really. I will say I'm liking Eggers more and more as a guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, okay, this guy who loves doing folklore. It's Nosferatu. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes, rated R. Vin, get into it, and we'll take it back and forth.
Well, we are back with good old Robert Eggers, a.k.a. Bobby Scramble.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it.
Put him next to Eddie Sliders. But it makes me very happy that we are kind of current on pace covering his directing career. We covered The Northman on the podcast with both The Lighthouse and The Witch rated on the site. If there is one trademark to spot here, folks, it's in his settings, which are always infused with a level of detail and folklore that just puts him a notch above the rest. Jump forward to the press circuit for this film, and you will see that Eggers has a passion for creating a authentically gothic atmosphere, going from using 5,000 real rats to casting the actual Lord of Darkness himself, Willem Dafoe. But Nosferatu is pretty much a direct remake of the 1922 film, with more emphasis put on Ellen Hutter as a character who is played by Lily Rose Depp, and rightfully the focus of the story. She kind of becomes the focus of the story in the original. So in watching that, and no less Lily Rose Depp kind of being a rising star, it made just perfect sense that she was going to be really more so the focus, and in a film with a lot of different characters and a lot of, like, you would call lead performances, her being the actual lead here.
You're right on that, with the kind of the shared time a lot of the times, where your focus is in a specific part of the movie, a lot of this person, not a lot of this person, whatever. It is. There's a lot of shared screen time. Yeah. But she comes out, I would put her top billing, personally.
Absolutely. I think it's a big ensemble, but she is the backbone of the story, her character. Yet again, we are in 1838 Germany, where Thomas Hutter gets assigned to travel to a mysterious client's home to finalize a real estate contract for the dim, grim, and slim Count Orlok. Thomas's journey takes him through the lands of witchcraft and superstition, but unlike the original, his arrival at Orlok's castle is not the first time the Count is acquainted with his new wife. Ellen Hutter remains in Germany, desperately longing for her dear Thomas. Dear Thomas. That was me in the theater looking for Tom. He's in the front row. Going, where the blasted devil is Thomas? But inside, realizing the dark truth about what his absence invites back into her life. A dark force become manifest, an appetite of endless hunger, the vampire Nosferatu. I got a lot I want to talk about here, but let's start with casting, because I feel like the whole movie is just a progression of increasingly larger foreheads. And I mean Nosferatu as well, like the hairline on the vampire. It's back. It's back. He looks like a xenomorph from Alien. There's so much headspace there. Nicholas Hoult seems to be just kind of typecasting himself in these vampire roles. Not too long ago, he played Renfield. And now he's back in this, so I guess,
Oh, yeah, he was in that zombie movie, too.
Yeah.
Like a while ago.
So that's just his bag now. This is now the third role for this year for Aaron Taylor Johnson, which is yet another little gift for not covering Craven. No less within the same month. I feel like I would have been sick of him on screen.
He is in everything. Nicholas Holt's third performance of the year, too.
Oh, no way.
He's just on fire just as much as Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Wow, look at that.
Nicholas Holt's in Juror number 2.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah.
Clint Eastwood's potential last film, and then he was in that one that just came out where he plays the white supremacist, and then you have the FBI agent.
Yes. The Order.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep, we didn't get
which
around
kind of
to it.
looked interesting.
Yeah.
Who was the other actor in that? Shit.
I want to say it was Jude Law. Man.
Yes. Okay, that's right, Jude Law. Okay, so, but yeah, so this is his third movie.
Wow.
Oh, and he's going to be Lex Luthor in the new Superman.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest paycheck right there.
So they're both they're skyrocketing right now. Nicholas Hoult and Aaron Taylor-Joy.
Absolutely.
Potential next James Bond. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see with Aaron Taylor Johnson. I've heard some recent news that someone else was being thrown around.
I heard that he got. They always bring it down to 3. Did we talk about this recently?
Not recently, but we've talked about the selection process before in the podcast.
They like to bring it down to 3, and then they bring you in and everybody, and this is all the way back with Barbara Broccoli. This is what she's done from the get-go. You have to film a scene, you have to do a scene from Russia with Love.
Oh, wow.
And then everybody does that. It was Aaron Taylor Johnson was in the top 3, and then a bunch of reports came out saying that he got it. And then I was like, I'm not sure about this. This is too soon of an announcement if this came out. Sure. And then months later, I started seeing that now he didn't get it. Meaning it would have been one of the other 2 that were in the running. So who really knows?
Yeah. But jokes about careers aside, I really did love all the performances in this. Lily Rose Depp is just completely unhinged here, to the point that you could just feel just as helpless as the characters next to her in the story with how absolutely manic and fanatical she is. I wish Ralph Ineson was, he got some solo time. This is my guy. But he's paired wonderfully with Willem Dafoe as the professors around this. So, just off the back of the original, there was something there that I loved how science was struggling with the occult. There's something there that I like, that they think it's a plague first and kind of have to then resort to the occult. Feels very Exorcist for me. While I'll save some of my thoughts on the look of Nosferatu, Bill Skarsgård finally has crafted a performance up there to match his version of Pennywise, being just a total transformation. You can barely recognize him under the makeup.
Bill Skarsgård, I didn't know it was him. My cousin had to tell me it was him, and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
And it turns out he did vocal work with an opera person to get his vocals down an entire octave.
Yep.
His voice is incredible, and the fact that is him sitting there and he is Count Orlok is shocking.
Yeah.
The prosthetics and the makeup are so fantastic. And it was wild. Everyone that you just listed off, by the way, is just killing it.
Yeah, they're killing it in this. It's so good. Now, Eggers is able to make the larger world much scarier and much more strange, which is why I'm glad he kind of took this project on. The atmosphere drips in alchemy, mystic philosophy, and most of all, the occult, like I said. And while this maybe lacks the deeper themes of a modern horror movie, maybe even like a movie that Eggers might do, like The Lighthouse, where it's interwoven with these themes, like all of his films, the substance is in the smaller details he crafts. I would say the mix of German, Romanian, and kind of gypsy elements creates an authenticity he's known for. And I think it's also best shown in how the vampire's powers are portrayed. I loved how Nosferatu's magic is shown to be very dreamlike, and how the seduction feels like a trance in the film. A great example of this is a scene that Thomas is near the fire once he's in the mansion, and there's a statue in the molding, in the marbling of this fireplace, this big room, and one of the statues turns their heads. I think while watching it as it was happening, I was saying like, oh wait, is that one of like Orlok's helpers or something? But no, he's experiencing like surreal changes, these dreamlike elements under the influence of being in his presence, which was just so cool. Like, not to have this directly explained as like, and this is the vampire's power, no, it's strange, and we're experiencing it as well as strange. There's like I said, the same kind of mysterious plague as the original, connected to rats, which I feel creates an interesting conflict between like these enlightenment feelings and superstition. And maybe most of all, Eggers is able to use the inspiration from 2 F.W. Murnau films, both that we've now covered, to really sell the shadow of the vampire and how it can sway reality itself. Just really cool. Obviously, my favorite shot is the shot that I've been mentioning that was pulled from Faust, where it's just the vampire's hand, the shadow is casted over the city.
You see that in the trailer, yeah.
Just so great, so great. It is time, though. I really, really want to talk about how they made Nosferatu look, but I can't because I think it is very, very much a spoiler. Just how, like, earlier this year, we had Nick Cage his look in Long Legs. That was a spoiler. I think it's a spoiler here. And I scoured to see if any official trailer showed Orlok at all, just so I could have an excuse to talk about it. But... and
the good news is you do see him in this.
Yeah.
They don't like hiding them.
Yeah,
absolutely. You see a lot of them.
I'll just say there's just one interesting choice that I'm just a bit tore on, and it's something that gets in the way of what's very iconic for a vampire. I'll say, however, I loved everything else about what Skarsgård was able to do with the monster. Like you said,
You're not
Tom.
going to say the one thing?
No, I think it's a spoiler.
You're going to leave us hanging?
I think it's a spoiler.
Well... How about this? You tell me if I feel like it's a spoiler, then I'll edit it out.
Okay.
Okay, so Edgar's been in interviews talking about it.
Really?
Yeah. And, Gene, I don't have to say it. We don't have to say it.
I think I'd rather just leave it.
Okay, I'll just say
I will say I kind of have a problem with it, though.
Okay, I don't.
Oh, okay.
And Eggers was all about it, and I think his reasons for putting it in, it's like, it makes complete sense.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Okay.
Fill in the gaps, folks. But like you said, Tom, Skarsgård working with vocal coaching to make his voice an octave lower for his natural voice, too. They gave Orlok a Darth Vader effect to his breathing, which was awesome, making him sound like an asthmatic dog or something, but it was like, it worked so well. In a movie with a lot of sexual scenes in this, I mean, obviously much more than the 1922 version. That's where you get the extra 30 minutes. They were able to just make his inclusion in these scenes just disturbing. The way like seduction and sexiness and then like disturbing elements and the vampire all mixed together was just like so interesting. All I'll say is, wow, the sound design for the blood sucking was just extremely detailed. I think that was one of the few areas I was really glad we saw this in the Dolby Theater, because
it was great theater. Oh my gosh, great theater. Go see it in.
And if, to your point about the voice, like his bassy, treble voice,
it's
like
fantastic. Definitely.
My biggest critique for the film is that just the runtime is too long, and it's only going to feel worse if you're waiting around for plot beats to show up. Folks, this is just such a direct remake. I find it hard to recommend watching both of these films. This is not a doubleheader scenario.
Either or.
Yeah, it's an either or. And truthfully, watching the original beforehand took the wind out of some scenes for me. I was definitely like waiting around for things to happen.
Okay, so let me step in here.
Sure.
Because one of the big notes I have is I don't know if my ignorance of this content was hurting my viewing experience or helping it.
Interesting.
And I thought it was hurt when I ended up coming to the conclusion of I think it hurt it. I think if I would have known the story more, I would have liked this more.
Interesting.
So that's the first time that maybe not. Because I thought maybe it was a bit long. The more I sat with it, I'm just like, okay, it's fine. Like, sure, if you want to I don't know, take 8 minutes off, sure. It's not going to affect me all that much. I mean, I guess you could find it. But overall, I was like enjoying my experience and thinking that had I known all the stuff before the original film or what's in the book, I was just like, oh, he's doing this. It would have excited me.
Yeah.
Very interesting to hear that it was adding a boringness factor because you know the deal.
Yeah, I think it was because
it's such a one-to-one beat.
Yeah, Phil. Even let's say just the original novel, there would have been like recognizable elements, obviously, whether that's the time on the ship or certain details of characters. Here, I mean, even just like how the plot progresses, how everything works, it's a remake.
Yeah.
It is and I know that's crazy.
I didn't know that. Oh, it's not crazy to say. I just didn't know that. I knew obviously so much care and consideration was put into this that you want to be your own thing, and yet give a nod, give your hat tips to the old stuff.
Yep.
I didn't realize it was that similar.
Yeah, and it really is. Honestly, the more the runtime there is, it's really just dedicated to more time with Ellen, because again, she is the main focus.
Yeah, you need to hash that out.
Yeah, she is the climax for both of these movies. So
quite literally,
right? I resisted many puns. One of them being this being a little long in the tooth. No. That was one I was resisting as well. You fell right into it. There's just something there that I feel like the runtime just. I don't know. For me, it was getting up and kind of waiting for the next moment that I expect. Yeah. I feel like the runtime is probably a bit too long for others as well. There's also a aspect to how the music is used in this, where I like the very high-strung violins that are going nuts in a lot of scenes, but there's something there that, man, it's played on the same type of beat again and again, that it almost becomes a little bit formulaic at times.
Wow.
So there was something there that I was just like, it just scenes built up horror in very similar ways almost for the entire film, where you look to the original and there are things not even related to Nosferatu that are designed to scare you. So truthfully, that's where I'm kind of coming from with watching the original, watching this. I mean, even down to specific shots, like I said, they are almost exact. You look to the boat scene. I mean, from the axe being silhouetted by the night sky to where he strikes the crates. I mean, like, it's really exact. And maybe it's not fair to compare two films 100 years apart, like literally 100 years apart.
Right.
But with how exact the story is, I think it's best that you watch this first and then go back to appreciate the original for all that is there. We're going to go ahead and give Nosferatu a 77.
A 77. Okay, that's a good score. I mean, a very good movie.
Yep.
That's a very good movie for us.
A secret Christmas movie.
Yeah,
they
said
it multiple times. They go, it's Christmas. I go, yes, it is.
Okay, 77%. So I could tell you wanted to give it in the 80s. I could tell you wanted to bump it up and maybe put in that special class a little bit.
And this is why I don't like getting overhyped for it, because I was really attached to the press circuit for this and watching a lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't want to say I was overhyped for it specifically, but there was something there in combination with watching the original that I was like, well, it's good, but they're both 70s. They're both in the 70s.
So my thing is, the performances were so good, and they were also helped by being good, because I thought the writing was good. So good on Edgar's for like fine tuning that over years, because I wasn't rolling my eyes at any of that stuff. I thought it was just appropriately done, which I really liked, and it looks great. He shoots on film, which I love, and it looks fantastic. And his set pieces, you were saying, his design is great. So I kept on thinking, it was the day after, 2 days after, and I was thinking there's one specific shot, I won't say where in the movie, but there's one specific kind of still shot, and I'll just call it the purple flower shot. I was just like, man, that was like gothically beautiful. It's super dark, super dark, but like beautiful. And I was like, oh, that's Robert Eggers. That's the movie. Yep. This movie is gothically beautiful.
Yep, absolutely.
So you get that darkness in there, and yet there's something about it that he really strikes and makes it awesome. And also with that, there are some set pieces or things that happen where you can almost feel that you're in a studio, and it looks kind of silly. It looks fake. It doesn't look real.
Okay.
But it looks purposely done, and it's sold, and it works really well.
Yeah.
And I can't even with some of the dialogue, it is silly or kind of overly whimsical.
Sure.
And yet something about it totally works.
Yeah.
Like, this film knows exactly what it is, and I don't know, it felt good being in the movie.
Definitely old-timey. This is 1838. It feels like the setting of 1838.
And it's weird. I think were there laugh sections in this movie? Were some people kind of chuckling at times?
There was definitely some people chuckling at Aaron Taylor Johnson, because he's so like, what the bloody devil are you talking about?
That's fine, though. Yeah. And you touched on in the very beginning, this isn't a real, we talked about it, actually. We brought it up on the podcast weeks ago, where you were like, I don't think this is going to be a straight up horror.
Yeah.
And I was just like, are you sure?
Yep.
And it's not a straight-up horror.
Yeah.
Kind of just like a dark fantasy thriller mystery type thing.
I think it's not straight up horror because, well, I mean, I don't know. It's
I mean, I did put horror on the site.
It is horror, absolutely, just like the original defined itself with horror.
It's not terrifying horor.
Exactly.
We have
It's
broken
not
this down
scary.
so many times. Right.
Yeah.
It's not spook horror. It's
it's
thematically horror.
Spoopy.
Right. It's gothically beautiful.
Yeah.
And I thought, so I don't know. I thought for the first half, I was just like, "What? Okay, where are we going here? What's happening? Are we leading up to actually something that's great? Are we feeling like I'm wasting?" And that's when I was feeling it was too long. I'll tell you what, the best.
Really, not towards the end.
No, by the end, I was just like, "All right, yeah,
Okay,
let's do this thing." But then I got home. I swear to God, I went home, immediately turned on Red One, muted it.
Oh my God!
Yes, Red One on Amazon, and then I muted it, and I was doing Robert Eger's information and research and stuff like that. And just having Red One silently on in the background on my TV, I started to get more and more an appreciation for this much better film.
Wow!
But I mean, honestly, my big thing was it's being ignorant to the content. Is it going to help or hurt? And I guess for me, still, I would say it kind of hurt it.
Okay.
And if I would have known some of the beats, I would even have more appreciation for it, I personally think. But overall, it was a great ride. It was great to be in Eger's mind and world a little bit because it is something different. It feels different. The characters were phenomenal, and the actors were great, and writing I thought was really good as well.
Sure.
But with that, we're giving it 2 shoes, and one of those laces are tied up.
Wow, there it is.
We haven't had for a while.
Also, the rare rating from you that is a horror movie. I mean, this is
very
completely.
Weird. I feel like I'm changing, especially after how much I liked Alien Romulus.
Yeah. Oh, very true.
Which didn't get a lace and only got 2 shoes, I think.
Very true.
But what can I say, Vin? You know,
what can I say? Tommy's a horror nut now.
You know what? That makes sense. You're finding that you may actually start to be liking John Wayne.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm starting to like Western. Their horrors a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, it was a blast. It was great to see on Christmas Day. And the more I thought about it, too, the more I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
And I want to see, I'm excited to see this again.
Absolutely.
Somebody asked me, should I just wait for it to go on video on demand, or should I see it in theaters? And I said, honestly, this is the one. Go to the movies to watch this one. I love the loudness and the bigness of it. I think really had a great effect.
Especially the opening. When we get actually the title of Nosferatu, that was specifically very striking.
Did you make a move?
What do you mean? Like,
Did you jump? Did you jump?
No.
Right.
That was another thing where it's just like, I don't know, it's spooky. It's not like I wasn't scared. So
Which I love.
Yeah.
I think he struck the balance great.
Yeah.
And I asked you that night of, though, but you saw me scurry when I had to go to the bathroom. From the front. I think I picked the perfect time.
You did. It's same with your popcorn eating. You're methodical. It's
what can I say?
What can I say? Run a movie podcast. What can I say?
All right, Finn. Looking at these scores, anything you want to add, man? Anything you want to talk about in the coming weeks?
Well, the only thing I'll say for this episode is that the only Nosferatu we're missing is there is a third Nosferatu from the 70s, directed by none other than Werner Herzog. So,
oh my God, that's right.
A big thing could have very well just fit into this week's episode. I think for me, where I came from after seeing both of these, I don't know. I wanted to put some distance to it in just the same way that I was just like, I was almost spoiled on the story by watching the original and watching this new one. I wanted to give it just a tiny bit of distance.
You also did see, last year there was Renfield that came out.
Yeah.
And there was Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're vampired up.
Right. But Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Stoker.
Right. With Keanu and who's our
Gary
boy?
Oldman.
Gary Oldman, right.
And there's a lot more Winona Ryder is in that.
Not the biggest fan of Winona.
Yeah.
But maybe something we'll get. Is that on the site?
I think so. That is a bad score.
All right. We'll let it sit there then. Vin, thank you so much for watching these movies, man. Next couple of weeks, folks, the next 2 weeks are catch-up episodes. Some of the movies will be pretty new, but they're catch-up also of what we missed in 2024 because in 3 weeks, that'll be our Tom Dailies.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to scoop everything up that we felt like we missed, covered on the Tom Dailies then, and we can put 2024 officially to a close and look on to the next year. But Vin, thanks so much for rating these and stopping by here tonight. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. we have the OG Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, with a 72%. I'm Not There with a 70%. A Complete Unknown with a 63%, and Nosferatu with a 2 Shoes, 1 Lace, and a 77%. These are actually pretty good scores here.
Yeah.
A decent week. Folks, thank you so much for listening, and as always, we'll see you right back here next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating, or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in what we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.